Life is a series of unscripted experiences that forge us into unique individuals. These are the experiences and stories of those who possess the will, beliefs, and fortitude required to overcome obstacles, pursue their passions, and achieve success. Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
As people can see, we have the visual element again for the great Robert Greene. Robert, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, AJ. My pleasure.
So it's funny hearing your voice and being on here, speaking actually to you, because I've heard your voice on so many different. I've listened to you on other podcasts. I've watched your TED Talk. I've heard you were on my buddy Aubrey Marcus's podcast.
Sure.
A year or so ago. So I hear you, and I've seen you. I watch some stuff of yours on YouTube, and it's like I don't know, man. It's crazy to think I'm actually getting to talk to you, but your whole, I mean, obviously, is author your number one title if you had to give yourself a title?
You mean the book that's done the best, or myself, like who I am?
Like, yeah, who you are, because I always try to see, like, how do people, when people, if, let's say someone doesn't, let's say the aliens landed right now, and they're like, well, who's Robert Greene? Like, what would you say?
Well, I like to consider myself a master of strategy and strategic thinking. Whether I live up to that, I don't know, but that's how I see myself. And my Gmail address is Mr. 48 Laws, so that's sort of my biggest book. And it's just sort of a way of looking at humans in as realistic a light as possible. So I'm a radical realist and a strategic thinker. How's that?
I like that, man. I like. I would. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. Like all that you've done. Like so. Let's just hit on the book you mentioned right there. I think the one that at least you talk, or I've heard you talk about the most, or I think I'm the most aware of is the 48 Laws of Power. That book came out in what, 1998?
Yes.
Okay, so that one. I mean, there's so much gold in there. It's hard to know what to get into, and I don't want to ask you all the typical questions you've had from everyone else, but I know one of the number one things that stuck out to me the first time I read it was law number one you have in there: never outshine the master.
Right.
Was there a reason that was number one?
Yes, because it's I think the law that most people violate in life, and it's a very dangerous law, and it's sort of simple to understand, so I wanted to open the book with it. And basically the idea is that everybody in life has an ego. And you might think that the person above you, there's always a person above you, you know, your boss or whomever. You might think that they're powerful and that they don't really care and that they're above having their ego, becoming insecure because something you said or did. But no, their ego is just as big as anyone else's. And you can inadvertently make them feel bad or make them feel insecure by trying too hard, by giving a joke or something, or somehow triggering their insecurities. And history is littered with the corpses of people who have lost their jobs or have been fired, who've been executed, because inadvertently, not realizing this law, they said or did something that made the master feel like you were outshining them. And so that was sort of why I wanted it to be law number. And I myself have violated that law on several occasions before I wrote the book.
Okay. Could you give an example of one of the times you violated that law?
Yeah. I was working for a person who's extremely powerful in television. This is before I was writing books. I will not say his or her name. And it was a great job. I was a researcher, interesting subject, and I worked really hard, and I came up with the best stories. And I had one proposal for what we should do with the show. I got kind of a little bit in love with myself, and I sort of proposed like the direction that the show could go on based on my great research. 2 weeks later, I was fired, and I could never figure out why I was fired. I was the best researcher. I had the best ideas. Everyone else there was so stupid and so lame. What did I do? What happened? I couldn't figure it out. Later, I could kind of piece together that I tried too hard and that I made people feel like I was better than them, that I was going to come and take over the show. And I did it on a couple occasions after that, but that was sort of the most basic time I did it.
Now, like, isn't that a bit of hypocrisy when you say don't outshine the master and never do that? But if it's a true master and the person is a good boss, they don't want yes men around them. They don't want people that are just going to tell them what feels good, aren't they?
Yes, but I told you I'm a realist. And yes, if we lived in a world like that, we wouldn't have wars. We would all be, it would just be paradise. But that's just not the reality. And that's exactly the problem that you have, is you go into a situation and you think, well, it should just be about who does the best work, and naturally you assume, if you're not that wise or you're a little naive like I was, you assume people think like that, but they don't. They do not at all. And believe me, it's in every aspect of life. I have talked to football players who have outshone the master, athletes, business people, politicians. It's a universal problem, a trait that we have.
Okay, have you come across any so-called masters, just say a boss of somebody that truly does want to hear the truth and truly doesn't feel insecure by someone underneath them maybe doing a great job, and maybe a boss that would be inspired by someone like you that maybe, pitched a good idea?
They exist, and they're awesome. They're powerful. They're great. There's the superior master, the boss. If you can find someone like that to work with, go ahead. It's the best possible situation. In history, I could say that the great icon of that was Abraham Lincoln. He encouraged the men in his cabinet to disagree with him, to tell them the truth about himself. He took a lot of criticism, and he used all of their opinions to come up with sort of a better solution. He was brilliant at it. So there are people out there like that. But they're very rare. Most bosses, so for instance, I work as a consultant. I have a lot of experience. I've been doing this for 18 years. I think I know the field pretty well. People will call me in who are very powerful for advice. I have this problem, Robert. This person is messing with me. What do I do? I give them advice. Do you know how many times they don't follow my advice? I'd say it's 90% at least. Jeez. And the reason is because they think they know better. And they only want to hear an opinion that will sort of confirm what they already believe.
Why would they bring you in the first place if they're not going to listen to what you have to say?
Because most people have this predisposition to wanting to hear, to believing that you're going to confirm what they already know. So a lot of my advice is counterintuitive. I'm going to be telling you, I'm brought in to give you the honest truth. I'm telling you, there's no games you're going to play with me. You're paying me a lot of money to tell you the truth. And in the end, they think they like that, but they don't. Because when they hear it, they go, well, I don't believe that. Maybe this guy isn't as smart as he thinks. Or they'll take my brilliant advice, which, they'll take my advice and they'll spin it into something that actually really confirms what they thought in the first place and don't really understand what I'm saying.
Okay. Have you ever used like a Jedi mind trick where it's part of that law number 1 where make the boss appear more brilliant than they are, right, and you make this boss think that it was their idea or their plan of what you did?
Of course. I try to do that. And if I had a job working for someone where I was employed by them, that would be my main modus operandi. But you must understand, they're bringing me in as someone who shouldn't have to play those games. Why are you paying me hundreds of dollars per hour? I'm not, trying to promote myself, but some of them do pay quite a bit. Why are you doing that if all you want is me to play Jedi mind tricks on them? It's almost like I can judge the person who's really going to succeed by the fact that they can take honest criticism. And I almost don't want to work with people that are not going to listen to me.
Man, I mean, I want to stay on this for a little bit just because this is fascinating to me. I had a coach one time tell me he was an assistant coach, and he said when one of the coaches above him would come to him with just crazy, irrational thoughts or irrational ideas about what they were doing, didn't know what he was talking about. This coach, he's like, he would have to sit in his office and find a way to make his boss think that it was his idea. Like he would come up with whatever this coach wanted, my coach, the assistant wanted to do. He would listen and he would be like, all right, well, this guy's an idiot. And then he would say, how can I formulate this to make this guy and his monster ego, which is really just covering up for this insecurity that he has. Like, how do I make him think this is his idea of what the direction that we're going to go?
Right.
And, like, is that all just because a lot of humans, especially when they get in high positions, are just crazy insecure?
Yes. And often people who get high positions, they have to deal with a lot of criticism. It comes with the job, and they're generally more sensitive than you think they are. I worked for a film director before I wrote my book, among many of my other jobs. And he was one of these types of people. And I did what you're talking about. I did the Jedi mind trick with him. And what I would do is I would say, you remember, Mr. X, when you told me this about this idea where you were going to put this in the story that we're producing, et cetera? And he'd go, oh, yeah. Well, it was actually my idea, but I just simply phrased it. Do you remember when you told me about your idea? Da, 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 da. So there are many ways, and my books are full of that kind of stuff about how you can do the reverse psychology. It's just at a certain point you wonder, the leaders, the people who are really, I feel, are the ultimate masters and professionals, you don't have to play those games with them.
You would hope not. If you want to bring a guy like you in, that is the top of his game in that kind of job. Like, if I was that boss and all of a sudden I realized that you were playing that trick on me, I can't imagine like the hit that would take on me. I'd be like, oh my God, man, am I that bad that he had to do this and make it sound like it was my idea? Like, I could envision that. So you're saying you do consulting now. Like, how can you take us through like what exactly that would be from start to finish when you go consult, say, with a business?
Well, it's all different aspects. It could be people who are very powerful politically in some foreign country, or it can be athletes or entertainers, actors, actresses. Usually they come to me with people problems. I tell them I don't know anything about technical stuff. I don't know anything about the internet, really. I'm kind of a moron, actually, when it comes to that. But I know people, and I know psychology. And if you've got an assistant or a partner that's messing with you, that's playing mind games that you're not sure about, I can come in and give you an objective opinion and help you maybe figure out what's really going on. So almost all the situations I'm encountering are people dealing with political problems and slippery, elusive, passive-aggressive people in their lives.
So is it usually individuals reaching out to you, or would it be like, let's just say, for an example, we'll use an athlete. Let's just say I brought you in as a consultant. I wanted to hire you, and let's just say that I felt like, well, I don't know, like I just had my third kid, hypothetically, which everything's great. Obviously, I feel great. My wife is awesome, but let's just say I had some issues with. I was like, well, we just had another kid. Everyone's really busy. My wife seems like she doesn't have time for me. Like, would that be some kind of thing that someone would bring you in for?
You mean like the relationship issues?
Yeah, you're not like a relationship guy, are you? Like that? Like,
Well, I wrote the book on seduction.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah,
I remember the very first client that I had. It was like 3 years after Power and Seduction had just come out, and he flew me to New York. He was from Canada. We met in New York, and I assumed that he was bringing me in for some. He was in a brokerage firm, a high-powered brokerage firm, and he just got promoted. I thought he was bringing me in to discuss his new position and all the problems. And about halfway through it became clear to me that he brought me in because he was trying to seduce his secretary. And I had written The Art of Seduction, and the guy's a married man with children, and I don't want to be the one like destroying his family with, I knew I couldn't tell him how he could seduce his secretary. It wouldn't have been difficult, but I didn't want to do it.
Was this before? Do you say this was before or after the book?
It was just after the Art of Seduction. It
Oh,
was
you
like,
couldn't just hand him the book. So here you go, bud.
no. He read it. That's
Oh,
why
he just wanted. He really wanted some more, some one-on-one coaching.
He wanted custom tailored individual advice about how to seduce and screw his secretary, and and it was simple. I in my head as he was telling me, I think, oh, all right, here's what you should do. But I'm not going to go there because I could see your kids right there, and I don't want this to happen. But so that does happen where people do want like relationship advice. In fact, a lot of people.
Wow. Yeah, I guess you do kind of touch on everything with the Art of Seduction, the 48 Laws of Power, all that. So yeah, you can. There's not really any area I feel like you couldn't coach with. But like, so if you're a consultant, do you just go observe this person in their natural element for a couple of days or what?
Well, I've done that, but mostly people are don't have a lot of time. I come in, hopefully beforehand, they write to me 5-6 pages, kind of getting me up to date with their problem, their issue, and then I go and meet them. It's always like better to have it person to person because it's hard to. I'm really a believer in looking at someone in the flesh, in their eye. I'm a big believer in body language, in reading people's anxiety or insecurities. So it's always person to person. And the longer, if it turns into a relationship, I have a few people that it's been ongoing for, let's say, 10 years. I have a deep knowledge of them. They can just get me on the phone and I can say, look, you need to do that. But in the beginning, it's like a relationship and you have to build it and I have to know you because from the outside, I don't really understand your problems. It takes time. I need a lot of information. And oftentimes people bring me in and they don't give me enough information. They kind of are skirting the issue. They're afraid or whatever it is. So I need to build this relationship.
So it's almost like you're a life coach slash psychiatrist slash psychologist, everything for these people.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you get into power, you're surrounded by yes men and yes women, and no one will tell you what's really going on. And you just need someone that you can get like an honest opinion from. Whether you're going to follow my honest opinion or not, that's another issue. But just the fact that you have on your cell phone a phone number for someone, because you can't trust your partner. If you tell your partner your weakness or your vulnerability, they might use it against you, or they might laugh, or they might think less of you. You're surrounded by people, except maybe your wife or husband or whomever, who you can't trust to open yourself up to. And so I can be sort of like that.
Okay. It makes sense. I know you talking about not showing weakness to, like, say, someone that works with you, even if they may be supposedly their job title is under you at the time, they could use that against you at some point. But at the same time, don't you build good relationships and become a good boss by showing people that you are vulnerable a little bit?
Yes. And that's certainly one of the laws of power that I have, is showing some weakness, even showing that you're not as smart as you are, kind of dumbing yourself down a little bit sometimes. I have a whole chapter on appearing more stupid than the next person. So yeah, it's good to show your vulnerability, your weakness, but in certain situations, there are a lot of moments where you just don't want to do that, Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, is there any way you could tell us, like, some of these big, powerful people you've met with over the years, is there one or two reoccurring themes that come up with a lot of them that they may have some of the similar issues?
Well, that's a good question. I'd say a really common theme, it may not be the most, but a really common theme is people violate law number 2, which is never put too much trust in friends. They work with friends. They hire as their partner their best friend from high school. They get their wife to be their whatever, to work with them. They need an assistant, and they hire someone who's a friend of a friend. And it is a complete mess up. It's like the worst situation you can get into. And I always tell people, you hire the most effective, the most competent person, and usually that's not the friend or the friend of the friend. So that would probably be like one of the number one. People having a bad partner is like the most common scenario. And in my new book, which I'm writing now, I'm addressing the aspect of character. I'm trying to tell people that the most important thing to judge people by when you're going to go into business with them or hire them is their character, not their charm, not their good looks, not the fact that they know your father or whomever, but their character. And so I get a lot of people that are bad judges of character. Well, we all are. We all are. I could be as well.
Do you think people, like a thing with character, I've always wondered this. Do you think you can be one way, like let's just say someone is at work and you could say they're a high character person, you could trust them, they have your back, they'd do anything, but then when they get off of work, they may be like your guy trying to get with their secretary and trying to cheat on their wife and maybe doing drugs or whatever they may be doing. Like, is it all or nothing? Do you think you're either high character all the time, or you can't trust them if the guy is, messing around outside of work too?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, look, we're humans. Nobody's perfect. Even even Mother Teresa, I'm sure, has flaws. So you're never going to find and interact with someone who doesn't have any secrets or doesn't have a private life. You're never going to be able to see. They're not transparent. People are never transparent. You're not going to see exactly who they are. But on the other hand, character is kind of like the grain in a wood, and it comes out through every action that people do. So if someone's doing drugs, or if someone seems to be great, but when they go home they beat their wife or they do something else, it's going to come out. You're going to see it. You can't hide things like that. There's something. The character is something altogether that you can't disguise, and so that kind of person who leads a double life, eventually you're going to pick that up. It's just that you're not. The problem that we have is you're not picking up the signals that people give out that they have a secret or that they're not exactly who they appear to be.
I like that, man. I like the grain in the wood deal. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that on my kids, man. When I teach my kids how to have some character and treat people and everything. Well, I like it.
There's a quote from Charles Dickens from Great Expectations about the varnish on the wood can't disguise the grain on it. So meaning people can put the fancy clothes and the big degree, but it's not going to disguise the grain underneath that varnish. That it's there and it's very deep.
I like it. It's something that I've said for a long time. It's pretty much on the same level. I always said you can't spray Lysol on a turd. You can't make a turd smell better, man.
That's a good way.
I guess it would be Febreze now. You can't spray Febreze on a turd. So that's the one I've used.
It actually makes it smell worse.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, it doesn't matter, man. It's like, oh, you watch some of these people. Every once in a while, you'll see these celebrities that they look at them, they cleaned them up, they brought them out of the wherever they're from, and they were doing meth and crazy, and no, look at them, they're so professional and doing great now, and then all of a sudden they fall off the wagon, and the real them comes out at some point.
That's right.
That's how I've always felt like. But I think there's a general lack of awareness just with people, and that's something that I don't know if technology, whatever it may be. Have you noticed that over the years, that just lack of awareness? That's something that just really gets me, man. When I see people that just every single aspect of life, just absolute lack of awareness, whether it's someone standing directly behind them trying to walk by, just anything, or just like you said, picking up signals on someone where I feel like you should be able to have good instincts when you meet someone. You can kind of tell if they're a good dude or a good person, like a good right off the bat, I feel like. And sometimes it takes people years to realize that this person may have this secret or treating people badly. Has that escalated over time, like an overall lack of awareness?
Well, I think so. In my new book, I discuss the studies that show people are become increasingly more self-absorbed. They've been tracking this since the late 70s with in looking at college students, measuring levels of empathy, the ability of people to get inside the mind of another person and get outside of themselves. And these levels have been steadily declining as they've been taking these tests, giving these tests to college seniors. So there's evidence to show, but we don't need the evidence. We know it. We know that people are more self-absorbed. They're locked in their phones. They're more virtual than ever. So being social and understanding people is a function of how often you're around people. It's a skill like anything else. If you kick 400 footballs to be a place kicker, you're going to be a lot better than the person that only tried it 10 times. If you're out there socializing with people and interacting with them and not like this, you're going to have a better awareness. You're going to be more connected. You're going to have those mirror neurons firing, and you're going to become more sensitive and aware. And if you're not, if you're locked in your computer, that skill is going to be highly degraded. So I can't say for sure, but science seems to back up the idea that these things are in a state of decay.
And you mentioned that in your new book. Do you have a title for that new book?
The Laws of Human Nature.
Okay. When do you think that thing's going to come out?
Oh, it's about 1.5 years away.
Okay.
It's a big project.
So
I'm sorry.
You've written 5 books, right?
Yes.
So, like, the process of writing the book, like you're in the middle of writing that book right now. Am I right?
Yes.
So, how does that work for you? Where do you sit and type on a computer? Do you have a room you go to? Do you go to Starbucks? Like, how's that work?
I'm in the room that you see, and I'm just work on the computer and I handwrite. I do both, kind of old school that way, and it's just massive amounts of labor. They're just labor intensive. I read over 300 books to write one book, and I literally read them and I take notes on them, and I have drawers full of cards that I could show you. And then when I write, the first draft is always terrible. It's just really bad. And it just takes a lot of reworking. Nobody ever sees the bad first draft.
I was going to ask that. You don't show that to anybody?
My girlfriend will look at the mediocre 5th draft, and she'll say, Robert, this sucks, change that. And then, it'll come out getting pretty good. So a lot of work,
And then you finally, is there any way you could educate us a little bit on the process of that? So let's say you have your final draft. You send that to a publisher then?
Well, I have a publisher. I've been loyal to the same publisher. The book I did with 50 Cent was with a different publisher. But besides that, I've always been with Penguin, and we always have a book deal before I write the book. So yeah, they get the chapters and we discuss. And I'm about to go into that process where I'm going to send them the first 5 chapters that I've finished, and they're going to give me their feedback. And I'm very open to people's criticism. I try not to violate what we talked about earlier on. If people come in and say, this book isn't working, or you need to do this, I'm open to it within reason, because sometimes they have bad ideas. But people will tell me, oh, this is a good title, you shouldn't use your title, or you should change this or change that. And I often, will listen to it.
How much does the title matter for a book?
It's important. I think a title should tell you what something is about. I don't like playing games with titles. So it should tell the reader, this is what the book is about, and maybe intrigue them a little bit. The Art of Seduction is a title that kind of tells you what it is, but it also excites you. You can do that with 1 or 2 words, you kind of hit the jackpot.
Okay. And I always wondered that, like how much input a publisher would have on an author. And I would assume you have all these, these great books already out there, already in the can that have become monstrous. So I would think you would get a lot of leeway, whatever you want to put out. Obviously you get final draft and final say and everything. Would like a first time author not have that much control?
Yeah, because success dictates a lot. I have 48 Laws of Power where I'm going to come up to about 1.5 million books have been sold just in the United States. So that means I have a lot of readers. So the publisher goes, all right, he's got loyal readers, and we can just trust that he could put out anything and he's going to sell fairly well. And I have a track record to go on. But if you're a first-time writer, you have no track record, you could be the greatest writer in the world, but people are going to be wary and they're going to think, well, this is what succeeded before you. You need to copy this a little bit. You're going to get much more of that energy. And I did on my first book, but I'm happily no longer in that position.
And how, so is there like different classes of authors where I know now it's a big deal to have a book to try to hit the New York Times bestseller list. I know myself that like I like to go out and give little speeches here and there, and I would like to eventually do that a lot more. And I know companies like my dad's company works for it's called LexisNexis. They bring in big time speakers every year at their national sales meeting, and they get paid a lot of money. And I know I've seen a lot of them aren't very good. But if they have a book too, I know you can charge more. So I know there's different reasons for writing books, and they're all whatever. It's whatever your intent is. But is there different like classes? You're obviously a guy. I would assume that you write books that are going to withstand the long haul. They're going to last forever, basically.
I'm hoping so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like, do you see that? Is that more now just because of everything? Obviously, technology, audiobooks are huge. Kindles, iPads, people are reading on. Is that has it changed the game?
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, that's for sure. First of all, it's hard to make a living writing books. I'm in a good position where I'm kind of a little bit beyond that. But new writers, it's really hard. You're not making enough money. Your advance for the book is not going to allow you to live for that long. So you've got to find other ways of making income, which is speaking engagements, a website, maybe a podcast, all that kind of stuff. And so the game has changed. It used to be you could just write your book and go off and live in your cabin in Vermont and live and collect your royalty payments, and it was fine. And unfortunately, just like the music business, record sales are not going to keep you alive. You have to go tour, you have to sell merchandise and all this other stuff. So it's a difficult game. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I don't have to, but I enjoy it. So and the consulting.
What is your main theme of your speaking engagements that you give?
I tailor it to everybody, to the audience that they bring me. And if my book has just come out, like Mastery, I talk about the learning process and how to transform yourself into a master, and that was sort of the more recent thing that I've been involved in. But some people will. I wrote a book called The 33 Strategies of War, which is sort of my version of the Art of War of Sun Tzu. So people will call me in and say, we just wanted you to focus on heavy strategic thinking. We're trying to figure out where we're going to be in 5 years. Can you come in and talk to us about grand strategy and the components of grand strategy, that kind of thing. So I tailor it. If a group of actors want me to talk, I'm not going to talk about warfare with them. It's going to be a softer thing having to do more with seduction or something like that. Okay,
you're master of many things. I feel
I'm a Swiss Army knife on that square.
There you go. I like it. In your book Mastery, which is awesome, by the way. How would you compare that to? I've a couple themes. I feel carry over are between like Mastery and the book Outliers, which I'm guessing you may have heard before.
Sure.
I don't know, did that have any impact on your writing, or what did you think of Outliers first off?
Outliers is a great book, but I actually read it after I wrote Mastery because I have a philosophy. I don't like to read contemporary books that are too similar to what I'm doing, because I want to come out of left field. I want the reader to go, wow, I haven't read this before. This is strange. And it's a marketing thing. I don't want this book to call to mind anything else. So if I've read Blink or Outliers, which I have, and they're good books, he's a great writer, it's going to influence me too much. And so I try not to read that. So I didn't read Outliers until afterwards. I have a different philosophy than Malcolm Gladwell. What I'm trying to say in Mastery is actually in some ways contradicting what he's saying in Outliers. He's pointing out the statistics that show why certain people are outliers and why somebody growing up in Canada will become Wayne Gretzky because of certain circumstances that fall into place. And my point of view is that's not true. There are surprises out there. There are people who become masters and geniuses, and there's no way you can statistically figure out where they came from. And so I try and explain why I think they became Albert Einstein or Charles Darwin. So we disagree on that, but I like that kind of disagreement. And so I generally avoid books like that until the book is over.
That makes sense. I've heard stand-up comics say that a lot. They don't really like to watch a whole lot of other comics because then somehow their material might just naturally sneak into their
That's
hour.
Right.
So I could see that. I would say, yeah, the only thing that I felt like, I guess, paralleled Mastery and Outliers was just when the whole 10,000 hours things that Outlier has, to become an expert or whatever. It takes 10,000 hours. And I know that seems like in Mastery, I really like that you basically say, if you're obsessed, like people that are obsessed with something and work towards it and fail multiple times over and over, they can master it if they basically keep working at it.
Yeah, the 10,000 hour is actually comes from a book that has nothing to do with Outliers. I mean, he popularized it, Malcolm Gladwell, but it comes from the studies that go back to the 1960s and that were kind of finished in the 90s that are fantastic. It's a brilliant piece of science that shows that something happens to the human brain after you've been doing something for 10,000 hours. And sometimes it's 9,800, and sometimes it's 10,200, but it's remarkably consistent. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. But the point of it is some people think, well, if I just accumulate enough hours, I will become Albert Einstein. No, it doesn't quite work like that. It's a little more complicated. It's how you put those 10,000 hours together. You have to have an intensity. You have to practice what you're weakest at. There's if you're a linebacker, and you're going to tend to practice certain kinds of tackles or schemes that you're already good at, and then your skill level is going to be lopsided. It's hard to practice what you're weakest at. It goes against our nature, and that's what you have to do with the 10,000 hours. It's called deliberate practice. So it's not just the 10,000 hours, it's how you do it. And I kind of try and go in the book. And Malcolm Gladwell talks about that as well.
It makes sense. Yeah, because people think, every once in a while, I feel like I hear them, they think, well, if I just keep at it, and they might not even be passionate about what they're doing, but they think that all of a sudden something's going to happen special for them. When I've always said it's the most annoying thing is watching people go to work or coaches come in early, come in at 5 a.m, and they won't leave till 11 o'clock at night, and they don't really do much from, say, 8 p.m. till midnight because they're just sitting there, and they call it, as a term, it's called guarding their desk, and they'll sit there and have to sit at their desk until like the head coach leaves because they don't want to be seen leaving early.
Yeah,
and I'm like, come on, man! Like your kids are missing out on their dad because you want to sit here and you don't want to look bad in front of somebody. Like you're leaving. It's how productive you are when you're there. It's not about the total time, I think.
Yeah, and also it's a function of how old you are. So when Mastery came out, this guy wrote somewhere, I think on Amazon, saying, well, this book is bogus. I've been a painter for 30 years, and I've put in 10,000 hours, and I'm a complete failure. But the point is, you painted for like 2 hours every weekend over the course of 30 years. That's not going to get you where you need to go. The people who are like Michael Jordan or Einstein or the Zuckerberg guy from Facebook, they're intense hours when they're younger, because the younger you are, the fresher your brain is, you absorb more, you're more creative. Mind just functions better the younger you are. So someone like Pele, the great soccer player, by the time he was 13 years old, he had put in his 10,000 hours. That's why he had great natural talent. His father was a soccer player, but that's that intensity and that focus and the kind of practice turned him in to a child prodigy in soccer.
So, do you have any children of your own?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I wish.
So, let's say myself, I have 3 young kids, or people that have any kids. What could be something that we could do to help promote like them work towards what they are passionate about without turning them into drug addicts? Because being like the whole I don't know if you know they're aware of the Todd Marinovich, his dad pushing him crazy hard, and then
Sure.
Todd's doing great now. He's an artist out in California somewhere.
He's surfing somewhere.
Yeah, but like he's the prime example of the dad who just grinded on him, and he got to college and realized like there was a life out there.
Well, that's the exact wrong approach, and I make a real big point of it in Mastery. You need to follow the path that meshes with who you are as a person. So let's say your son, if you have a son, is not into football. He's just not into football. And it could very well be because these things have a genetic component, and it could have absorbed something from his mother and his energy. And he wants to be a dancer. And that's like, well, I don't want my son to be a dancer. But he could be an incredible dancer because he feels like that's what I want to do. Your tendency will be, no, now listen, son. You got to choose something that I'm proud of. I want you, okay, you don't like football? Let's get into boxing or kickboxing. Let the kid go in the direction that he loves, no matter if it offends you or no matter if it's not your taste. As long as it's not dangerous, as long as it's not going to hurt somebody, and encourage them to bring their own emotions and desires into it. Because if you get your kid at the age of 9 hooked into learning, so let's say he loves dance and it's just not your thing, and when he's 6, you send him to school and he learns it and he gets really good at it, he's going to develop this mindset of learning is fun, man. If I spend 3 years practicing, I get good at it and it's exciting. And maybe when he's 15, he no longer is interested in dance, but he's excited by learning and doing things, and he has confidence because he saw when he was 9, he was able to conquer something. You want to go with what the kid brings, his energy, or her inclinations, and build on that.
I like it, man. That's awesome. I feel like it's a fine line between letting them, and I've always 100% felt like I will support them and I'll be there for them every second for whatever they need, but I'm never going to be the guy that's going to be out making them in the backyard running sprints and making them work out and do all that. They need to have that on their own, basically. But I like how you said that. Yeah, if you figures out that learning and you can become very confident, I think it'd be such a great confidence booster, and that's a huge thing for kids, especially. I have a daughter and two young sons, and I'm always, I mean it, but I'm always pumping my daughter up, telling her how beautiful she is, telling her how pretty she is, because I know, especially with girls, man, like self-esteem is tough because people like to knock on them, and people, especially now, because kids aren't scared to post them pictures of themselves all over the place, and people just want to rail on them. And I know girls can be very catty, so I never want that like self-esteem thing to be an issue. And confidence is monstrous, I feel like, when it comes to being successful in anything. Right.
Well, with girls, you want to also encourage them to feel that confidence in some kind of activity that doesn't have to do with their looks. I agree with your strategy, but to like get them to be really good at music or something else, so they don't feel their whole self-worth is tied in with their looks, is very important. But a really good example from Mastery to me is I interviewed some 9 people who are contemporary masters to sort of mix into the stories, and one of them is a guy named Cesar Rodriguez, who's like the last great American fighter pilot, who's considered an ace. And he was like not a golden boy. A golden boy is somebody who goes to Air Force Academy who's just got it made. They've got that Tom Cruise type thing where they get in a plane and they're just ripping. They know how to do it. He was the opposite. He was really awkward. He's a short Hispanic guy, and he wasn't good at it. And yet he wanted to. And he remembered when he was in high school, he played football. And he could always remember that he had faced the same situation in high school. He was short, a little bit chubby, and he played quarterback. And he taught himself that I can conquer anything. I could, with practice, if I want something, I can get it. And it'll take a few months, but eventually I'm going to get better and better at it through repetition. And he had that memory. I call it trust the process. He could trust the process and know that as a fighter pilot, he would also conquer his own inadequacies. And in the end, he ended up being far better than any of those other Golden Boys.
I know that's something that Ryan Holiday, who hooked us up and gave me your contact info, so I appreciate Ryan very much. I've learned a lot from that guy already in a short amount of time of knowing him.
Yeah.
I know he loves you, but I know he says that, process-oriented people it's always better to be process-oriented than results-oriented, which makes sense once you hear it, but it's a lot easier said than done. I definitely think that. But if you trust the process, I've heard you say that, trust your process. Like, how does someone come up with their process, though?
Well, in the beginning, you've got to sort of use what other people are showing you. You have to kind of, let's say you have a mentor or a teacher, or you're learning a trade. You've got to be very attentive to the coach, to the boss, to the instructor, absorb their wisdom, and not put yourself out there and not think, well, I know better. I can adapt to my own process. You have to be open and humble and learn. And then as you get better, then you can start personalizing the process. I have in the book the example of Bill Bradley, basketball player, loved basketball. He was very tall, but he wasn't very skilled. He was just your average white guy who couldn't jump very high and wasn't that quick. Through practice, he turned himself into a magician on the basketball court, and he created his own practice. So he's sort of violating what I just said, but it was all in the spirit of he did what the coaches said. Then when he went home, he invented in his own home. He put chairs in his room, and so that he could practice dribbling in between the chairs, and he made special glasses so that he could practice dribbling without looking down at his feet. He invented all these things, which made it a lot more fun, but kind of building on what other people give you. So there's room to be creative with the process, but in general, people in the past have sort of figured it out, and you need to kind of trust them on that.
Is that something though that you think people are born with, like that drive to want to go do that and to go home and set the chairs up and to basically come up with those glasses so he can't see the ball while dribbling? Like, is that feels like to me a lot of times that it's either you have it or you don't. I don't know if that's a learned behavior or not.
Well, that's a great question. My answer in mastery is that sure, there's some people that are more driven than others. Let's just say there are some people who feel a deeper need to succeed, have a higher level of ambition. But in general, I think we all have the potential to be like Bill Bradley. It's just that we don't find the subject or the field that brings out that excitement and that intensity. So in other words, Bradley, when he was 9, loved basketball and loved the sound of it swishing through the net and hitting the pavement. And then that's all he wanted to do. But let's say his father said, no, you son, you're going to become a great doctor. I don't want you dribbling. There's no future in that. Come on, just practice like a normal kid. But none of this crap where you're practicing every moment of the day. He could have had a father like that, and Bill Bradley wouldn't have become who he was. So it's like we said earlier, if you let the kid kind of go where they want to go, if they have that intensity and they love it, they're going to reach a level that's a lot higher than if you try and force them, if you do the Todd Marinovich strategy.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I feel, maybe people that don't seem to have it or seem lazy in certain areas, they just haven't found what you're passionate about. I don't know. I mean,
well, there are some people who are lost.
Yeah, there's a lot of people lost. Actually, I mean, we can say that.
Well, a lot of the people who are lost didn't have the right direction, and they didn't have the right mentoring, and their parents messed them up. And there are people who are just lost and nothing. Mastery, 48 Laws at Malcolm Gladwell, nothing's going to help them. I
Right
understand
over
that.
their head, man. You might as well be speaking to a brick wall. You're right.
Yeah,
Those
and
people.
they're gonna descend into drugs and whatever, and you can't help them. Okay, but there are a lot of people who don't understand how the brain works, how you can learn things and master anything if you find what it is that excites you. And I have in the book, Temple Grandin is one of the masters that I interviewed. She is a professor, a scientist. She was born with autism. Okay, so severely handicapped in childhood to the point where she was hospitalized, couldn't speak until she was 4 or 5 years old, lived in a world of total darkness as a child. This woman is now a universally respected scientist. She overcame all those handicaps and became a master. If she can do it, I don't know why anybody can't.
I think I'm with you there. I've seen it in many different scenarios where some people that it's true. A lot of people are we start out in life, we win the lottery basically, and I've heard people say that before in other podcasts. Like, yeah, I was born here. I wasn't born into the hands of ISIS, and
Right.
getting trained from a young age to bow to the Prophet Muhammad and say kill all the infidels. Like, I wasn't born into that. I'm very lucky for that, and I also was lucky enough to have great parents that were always there to support me, and so but I felt like I've always been curious, whatever, want to work hard, and it's just been something inside of me. And I've also had 2 older brothers that I think brought that out of me. But I've seen people who maybe had a really tough childhood, a really tough upbringing, maybe both their parents weren't around, whatever, and they use it as a crutch or an excuse when they get older to say why they are the way they are. But then on the flip side, it's absolutely inspiring to see people that have had just the most brutal upbringings change everything and say, like, well, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to be my dad. I'm not going to beat my kids like my dad beat me for years and years. Yeah. And they change it. Like, what is it? Is there some switch that these guys have in their brain that figure out, like, no, I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'm not going to use this as an excuse.
I don't really know the answer to it, but it's an amazing phenomenon. I'd love someday to write a book just about that. I did a book with 50 Cent.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, the 50th Law. Like, that's what I was thinking about throughout that. Like, I know he didn't have the easiest time. I know he was the absolute hustler. That's how he made himself who he is.
He not only had not an easy time. I mean, his mother was murdered when he was 8 years old. He was taken in by his grandparents along with. I mean, I know where he lived because I went there and hung out with him. Really bad neighborhood, the worst part of America. And had everything against him. His father never knew his father, and his mother was murdered, and was from the age of 9 was stealing drugs on the street to make money. Got shot, nearly was killed, had a bullet that went through his mouth, and he's turned into, I think, a very ethical person, decent. He's a very good leader. He treats people really well. I mean, he's a hip hop artist, and he has his beefs, and he can be tough and mean when he has to be. But how did he turn out that way? How did he overcome that? We talked about it. He thinks, for him, he would say he thinks it's almost mystical. It's like he got it from his mother, the mother that was murdered. He said that the little that he could remember of his mother was that she was an intense, energetic person, had incredible energy. She was a hustler herself, and that's why she was murdered. But she had this incredible energy, and he felt like he inherited her energy, and he said, like, that kind of thing is not something people can learn. So that was his take on it. But then, if I studied hundreds of these people, maybe I would come up and I would see a pattern. I know the coach of Clemson had a really, really rough childhood, and he talks about it a lot with his team and how he overcame that. I'm sure there's a pattern, and if I studied it, maybe I could figure it out.
So how do people that didn't have that adversity growing up, like, how are they able to, overcome it and do great things, and not even just almost overcome their good fortune? When you don't grow up like that, and how do you, without going through all those bumps, as you're coming up? Like, how do you still prosper as you get older?
Well, you have to have some independence of mind, and you have to kind of develop a work ethic and discipline earlier on. If you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, it's almost a disadvantage in a way. You think you've privileged. You know, life is pretty harsh. It's a competitive world out there. It's pretty dog eat dog. I mean, if you've ever had to be an entrepreneur or write a book or play football, it's not easy. It's not what you thought it was when you were in high school. And so when you have a privilege and you have your parents giving you everything you want, sending you to Yale and et cetera, and you get out, you don't have life skills. You think you deserve things. You feel entitled. You expect great things to happen. So you almost have to overcome that. So 50, he had to overcome growing up in the worst neighborhood and all of the crap that came with it. People who are wealthy have to overcome, or who are born in privilege, have to overcome the fact that they feel entitled and have not developed life skills. Both of them have to overcome these resistances. You are a fan of Ryan. The obstacle is the way. The very thing that stands in your way that's preventing you from being great is actually the thing that will turn you into being great if you reverse it, you know. So that privileged kid, the best thing he or she can do is get out of school and fend for him or herself, not accept the money from the parents, go try and start a business, fail, get some toughness, get some tough skin around them. That's probably the path they should take.
I agree with you there, man. And it's got to be harder and harder, I think, now, though, it's almost cliche to talk about, or hack to talk about now, because everyone talks about like the entitlement of all these young punks, whatever. Like I don't ever want to be that guy, because I know every single generation has had that, I'm sure, no matter when you lived. But it's true with how everything is trying to, the whole participation trophy deal that people talk about going on, and there's no losers and whatever there may be. Obviously, that's just absolutely asinine. I actually realized that with my kids know right away. There's losers and there's winners, and my kids will both say. My dad was laughing. My kids were with them. We saw my parents a couple of days ago, and my mom told my daughter tells my little son. She says, "Remember Hendrix? His name's Hendrix. Remember Hendrix? It pays to be a winner." Because I tell him that all the time. It pays to be a winner. I used to watch a lot of Navy SEAL stuff on the Buds, and they would tell him that, like, if your boat team wins, you get a little bit of a break. So they're cleaning up all their toys in their bathtub. My two kids, they're taking their bath together. And I tell them the whole time, like, all right, guys, it's a competition to see who can be the best cleaner-upper tonight. And they just and they go and they put all the toys in. And my daughter's, like, stealing toys from my son, saying, I'm going to win. And then he's like, no, and he fights. And then they dump him in. And then they ask me who wins. And I got to declare a winner every night. So I declare a winner. And I remember,
that's a great strategy.
Yeah, I've even, every once in a while, I'll feel bad and, like, it'll be close. Like, you know what, tonight, guys, it was actually a tie. But I want to do that every once in a while. And usually my daughter wins because she's 2 years older. And I'd be like, you win, Lennon, you're the winner. And I'd be like, Hendrix, you're second place, you lost. And I make sure he knows. He doesn't like cry over it usually, right. But I let him know there's clearly winners and losers. And I can see it already, how pumped they are to be the winner now, because they know how terrible it is to lose. Yeah. And so like I feel like our brain has to have that from a really young age.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that's something parents can really try and instill. I was a really super competitive brat as a kid, still am to this day. I hate losing, man. I just hate losing. I could have channeled it into sports, but I wasn't gifted that way, so I've channeled it into other things. But, some people are born with that, and they don't need their parents. I read a biography of Tiger Woods, for instance. At the age of 2, that kid had the competitive spirit that he had when he was 20, and Michael Jordan. Some people are born with that, and your parents don't need to really make it any stronger, but some people aren't. And I find that participatory idea, just you're only going to make sure that your son or daughter will be a loser by instilling that idea in them. Because there are winners and losers. There's no such thing really as a win-win situation. People win and some people lose. And that's just how life is. And you better to learn that when you're 8 than to learn that when you're 20.
I think that is something that it's tough now because I see schools and everything. You can't play dodgeball. You can't do anything to where someone feels left. I've heard now there's schools where they don't let them dress up for Halloween because like someone's costume might be better than the other or something, and they feel bad.
Or it might offend other people.
Yeah, like that thing. Oh my goodness, that would I struggle with that. So I just wonder moving forward, like
Yeah.
20 years from now, like what is it going to look like when all of these kids grow up from this? Because I think this is kind of unprecedented. I don't think there's another time in history. I don't know. You can let me know if I'm wrong that there was more of an effort to create this kind of overall sense of, participation is all that matters.
I don't know. It's so un-American in a way because, I read a lot of things about like the 19th century kind of spirit and Lincoln. I'm reading a book now about the guy who built the trains that came across country to California. And, our spirit was like, we can overcome anything. And it was a really competitive society. It's a society that promoted practical thinking, getting things done, having results. And if you work hard enough, something great will happen. That is what it means to be American, to lose that and to make it feel like, oh, everyone's just wonderful. Let's just hold hands and, come on, we don't want to offend anyone. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not growing up now because I couldn't stand it. I'd be like a total outcast in a world like that,
I think it's good. I think it's going to be better and better to become an outcast in the world now if you're a kid. Like I think
that's true.
That's like the outcast is going to be the outlier that's going to succeed.
But you know what will happen? These things go in cycles. In 20 years, young people coming up from a new generation are going to be so sick of that namby-pamby, we're all winner treatment that they're going to be tougher than anyone. They're going to rebel and they're going to kick ass like they used to be. I hope and I feel that,
I think you're right. I think that's a great thing. I'm going to try to start. I'm trying to get my kids to start that revolution.
They're about the right age, yeah.
So hopefully someday when they're older, they can watch this and they can listen to it and realize, like, hey, I was trying, guys. I was trying to figure it out. In the weird padded world you were growing up in, all around you, we're trying to keep it real here, at least at home.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We're trying.
Yeah. What instilled you? Just ask you a question. What instilled you when you were growing up with your fierceness and your work ethic and your discipline? Was it your parents or you?
Man, I mean, I think it definitely started. I think I just saw it from my parents. I saw it, how they lived, how my dad worked, how much he cared about us. My mom as well, like what she did. And I'm the youngest of three boys, so both of them too, not only physically, beat me up, and always would try to fight with you and whatever. They weren't trying to like teach me lessons, at least in their mind, but you learn early on like how to handle yourself. But
yeah,
I think it's something where you're born with it, and then when you figure out what you really enjoy, like you said before, you just have that in you. And the thing that I say on here before, and I've told my dad, and he knows, like he was always there when he never ever once made me do anything. Like I started lifting weights when I was like in 6th grade and would always want to go to the batting cages. I would wake my dad up. Like we found a batting cage that was open 24 hours. And I would like in like middle school or 5th or 6th grade, I'd wake him up like 1 a.m, like, hey, can we go, let's go hit. And he would just roll out of bed and take me and we'd go hit under the lights at this batting cage. And so like at the time I didn't realize it, but as I got older, especially I had my own kids, I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. Like he actually, I would think most dads would just stay asleep and say no and tell me to go back to bed. But
you mean really at 1 o'clock in the morning he would take you to the batting cage?
Oh yeah, or like he would do that. I remember the place we found it. It was like we won the lottery when we found that this place would stay open, and all you needed was they didn't have a guy working there. They just had the outdoor cages, and you just had to put the coins in. But or it would just be at our house. I would wake him up to go shoot free throws, and he would rebound for me, or he'd just be the catcher. He bought catcher's equipment, and I would pitch to him, stuff like that. I realized but then as I got older, I'm like, he never once woke me up. He never once like told me, hey, let's go shoot hoops, or you need to shoot 100 free throws today, because I think that would have really rubbed me the wrong way, and I think I would have gotten so mad. I would have gone the other way, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true, because kids are very willful. and they have an obstinate streak, and they want to do what they want to do. So you have to practice reverse psychology with them, or kind of go with what they're saying. I think it's true.
Yeah, that's a constant thing for me. What about you? Like, who did you have any mentors or whatever when you were young?
No, not really. I had a great dad. We did a lot of sports, and he was kind of like your dad in that sense. And I get him to throw the baseball with me whenever I wanted to, that kind of thing. But it was more for writing and stuff. I kind of discovered that on my own. I didn't really have any, but my parents were encouraged me to read, and I remember very clearly a turning point when I was about 9 or 10 in elementary school. They gave you this sheet of where you could order books through the mail, and it had like 200 books, and I ordered like 120. Nobody did that. You were always supposed to order like 5, and they were mostly about war because I was really into World War II. And they let me buy them all. It cost quite a bit, and I had 120 paperback books. So they just sort of, like your dad, they just kind of let me do it. But I read something that I'm putting in my new book. It's really interesting from psychology about children. They learn more. Kids are smarter than you think, and they learn more from who you are and what you do rather than what you say. They can see through your hypocrisy or your bullshit if you say something, but you don't really practice it. They look at who you are, they absorb your energy, and they feel like your example that you set is like 80 times more persuasive than what you tell them, And you were sort of saying that.
I'm with you there. I hope there's some science to back that up, like you said, because that I've heard that from other people, and I agree. My daughter's she just turned 5, and
Wow.
she definitely does not lack awareness. She knows everything that's going on, and she's a master manipulator already. Like, she knows who I almost give her credit, but like, she can sense like the weak target. Like, she can say, like, if she knows there's a certain family member come in, she knows who to go to if she wants like candy or she needs something, because she knows they can't say no to her, and she'll like turn on the charm already. So it's ridiculous how like advanced I feel like kids are now, for sure. And I mean, I'm sure I'll get in trouble at some point for things I'm teaching her. Like, we were leaving the house yesterday, and there was a lady coming up our driveway, and she saw me. I don't even know what this lady was doing, dropping something off, and we didn't know her, and she was blocking me. She saw my car coming out of our driveway, and she was blocking me because she was on her phone or something trying to call my wife to get into our house. And yet all she had to do was pull forward and let me get through, and she could have just driven up to the front door. But for like 3 minutes, she's sitting there, and I was like, I started to lose it. I was like, guys, you see this? I was like, this nice, I tried to like make it soft a little. Like, this nice old lady up here lacks awareness. She lacks complete awareness. Look at us. We are 20 feet away from her, and she will not let us get out of our own driveway, guys. Do not lack awareness. Like, I try to, and they're like, what's lack awareness, Dad? Like, they can't even completely figure it out. So like stuff like that, I'm trying to set plant the seeds early for them. So.
Yeah, they call it situational awareness in the Army, and it'll spell life or death for you, and maybe you can tell them in the real world it could spell the difference between life or death.
Yeah, that's right, man. And it's like it's the same thing. Like, as you get older, tell me if you feel the same. I know as I get older, I don't, not to be whatever harsh, but I don't have time for idiots. Like, if I come across people, and I am myself, I'm an idiot, and believe me, I understand. I'm just a guy, but I know, like, if someone, I'm sure like, you meet people and you just get a weird sense early on, and they're feeding you just garbage, whatever they're going to tell you about I got this great investment idea, or they want to tell you some weird ideas, and it's way too long of a story. Like, I don't have. Maybe I used to sit there and I would entertain it for a little bit just to be nice. I won't be mean, but I'll just remove myself completely from the situation and just get out of there now, I feel like.
Well, you've already reached that point. I reached that point when I was like turned 50. You've already reached that point. That's pretty good.
I'm not great at it, but I'm usually good at just kind of slipping out of the room and getting out of there.
Well, life is short, and I can't waste time anymore. I'm only going to be alive for so many more years. I got books to write. I don't want to hear your story goodbye, but I used to not be like that. So it's pretty good that you've gotten there so quickly.
Well, I've definitely learned, I think, just to trust my instincts right off the bat early on, and I think that's I don't like not try to be I don't I'm not mean to people to their face or whatever, but it's just
No,
like if you get
no.
a weird feeling about someone, like there's no you're usually right. I feel like I'm usually pretty right on it if I'm gonna mesh with this person or not, and you can
Yeah.
always sense that, you can always feel that, and
It's something in my new book. I have a chapter on nonverbal communication. And oftentimes we sense that person that we're dealing with is an idiot or is somebody we don't like. And then we don't trust it. And then like we had it when we first met them. And then 2 months later, something bad happens and we realize, and then we might remember, oh shit, I thought that about that person originally. Why didn't I? You got to like trust those moments in the very beginning when that animal part of you senses something isn't quite all right with that person you're dealing with,
yeah, when they come back to prove you right, and you're like, come on, man, I could have saved myself 2 months of my life right here.
Yeah.
That happens with, I'm sure you happen with your girlfriend if you meet couples and you go out with couples, like a new couple or something.
Uh-huh.
I can tell instantly if we're gonna get along with the couple. Like I don't say my wife knows, she knows the girl, and I haven't met the husband yet, and she hasn't met the husband or whatever. And my wife never. She's really good at knowing and reading me and reading like who different people are. She can tell like, oh, you're gonna love this guy.
Yeah.
Or like she just won't set up the dinner if she knows I won't and get along with the dude. But I feel like that's something where couples it's even tougher because all of you have to, those dynamics, man, for everybody to get along, that's almost impossible.
Yeah. And women are often better at it than men. They have a better sense of this. They kind of read people a little bit better. But yeah, couple chemistry is a tricky thing.
Yeah, women have a special power, I feel like, where they just they have some other sense, I feel like, where they can figure things out, but they got to trust it. I don't think my wife doesn't trust it all the time though.
Well, the studies show that actually women don't have an advantage with that on levels of empathy and reading people.
Really?
But it doesn't seem right because my experience is that they are better at it, but the science doesn't back it up.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. Maybe that'll be your 7th book. How many do you think you plan on writing? Do you have another one already in the works after this one's finished?
Well, the next one after I finish this one is probably going to be different. I need a change. I need to go into a slightly different direction. I know what it is. I'm not going to tell you because
like,
I like
52 Shades of Grey or 53 Shades of Grey or something. One of those, another one of those.
Not that radical. I think I'd rather kill myself than go in that direction. No, thank you. No, but something a little more philosophical. Actually, a little similar in some ways to the kind of thing that Ryan writes, but in a shorter book, a little more philosophical about an idea that I have that I talked about in the 50th Law, actually. And so, I hope if I live, knocking on wood, till I'm 80, 90 years old, I just keep writing until I drop dead. So hopefully it's, 12, 15 books out there. And they'll get shorter and a little bit easier. I know one thing, though. I'm slowing down. I don't have when I was starting on my first book, I could sit for hours and just work. I just don't have that energy anymore. So the motor is kind of not spinning so quickly anymore.
Yeah, you have to get on some of that Hunter S. Thompson plan.
What's that?
All that, whatever.
Drugs?
What was it, the Rolling Stone article or whatever, when they went through like his whole day of what? Yeah, I mean, drugs, booze, cigarettes. Oh god, yeah, his whole day.
Yeah, but look what happened to him.
Oh yeah,
I'm kind of the type. I want to go. I'm planning on longevity. It's been my plan for a long time. I mean, unless I get cancer, I get hit by a car. I work out every day. I'm kind of careful because I want to be writing in late in life, because I feel like the older I get, the more I know. I have something to share. So I'm trying to not be the Hunter S. Thompson and burn out when I'm 40. I'm trying to be more like Benjamin Franklin, who kept on working until he was like 90 years old. It's in the hands of God, but that's sort of my plan.
Well, that's awesome, man. gonna wrap this thing up. I really appreciate you, man. You're awesome. Thank you very, very much for coming on here. Really honored to meet you and talk to you for sure. Where can people can find you out there on the internet if they want to check?
Well,
you out?
The best website is my first one, www.power seduction and war. The and is spelled out. powerseductionandwar.com. There you'll find some of my blog entries and interviews, and then a link to the Mastery website. So that's sort of the best place to go.
Okay, yeah, we will. We'll put the link up there for everybody as well. Power, Seduction, and War can kind of guide everybody to all your stuff. But thanks again, man. Really appreciate it. And look forward to that newest book coming out here and everything else down the road.
Well, thank you, AJ. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. And good luck with your kids. They're going to be amazing in 20 years.
Yeah, thank you. We will see. We're going to show them this. I'm going to show them this to prove to them when they're reading the 48 Laws of Power. Like, hey,
don't keep it
I talked to that dude.
Keep it away from your daughter. She doesn't need this book.
You're right. Maybe she's 40.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Robert.
All right. Thanks a lot, AJ. Take care.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.